The triple suns of Kareth 9 blazed overhead as Arya Voss stepped out of the human diplomatic outpost, squinting against the harsh violet light. She'd been stationed on this frontier world for 6 months now, serving as the sole human liaison to the Vrexian Empire. A civilization of apex predators who'd conquered half their galaxy before humanity even invented the wheel. The Vrexians looked like what would happen if evolution designed the perfect killing machine. 8 feet of corded muscle, obsidian scales that could deflect plasma fire, and eyes that tracked movement across 3 different light spectrums. Their cubs, however, were a different story. Arya had discovered this 3 weeks ago when she'd accidentally left her sunglasses on a rock near the training grounds. The polarized lenses, unremarkable to humans, had proven absolutely fascinating to the young Vrexian cubs who found them. Within hours, every cub in the colony had crowded around to examine this strange human artifact that made the world look different. She should have retrieved them immediately. She didn't. Now, as Arya walked toward the central plaza, she spotted the consequences of her negligence, or perhaps her stroke of accidental genius. Tovik, a cub barely 4 feet tall with scales still soft enough to shimmer like oil on water, stood at the main gate wearing her sunglasses. The frames sat comically large on his narrow face, but he wore them with the gravitas of a seasoned investigator. Behind him, 3 other cubs had fashioned crude imitations from scavenged materials, dark glass fragments held together with military tape, creating their own versions of the mysterious human eye shields. "Halt," Tovik announced in gravelly Vrexian, one clawed hand raised. "State your designation and purpose." Arya bit back a smile. "Arya Voss, human liaison. Returning from perimeter check." Tovik tilted his head, the sunglasses sliding slightly down his snout. "Verification required." He pulled out a datapad, where had he gotten that, and scrolled through it with exaggerated seriousness. "Your movement patterns show a deviation of 12 degrees from your usual route." "Explain." 1. This was new. The cubs had been wearing the sunglasses for days, mimicking what they thought human detectives looked like based on the old Earth noir films she'd shown them. But they'd never actually stopped anyone before. "I needed to check the western perimeter," Arya explained, playing along. "Sensor Array 3 was showing anomalous readings." Tovik made a show of noting this down. One of the other cubs whispered something to him, and he nodded sagely. The western perimeter. The same location where Supply Officer Krenth reported missing ration packs yesterday. He pushed the sunglasses up his snout with one claw. "Interesting." Arya's eyebrows shot up. Krenth had reported missing supplies, but that was classified military business. How did the cubs know? "We've been conducting surveillance," Tovik continued, his voice dropping to what he clearly thought was a mysterious whisper. "Following leads. Gathering evidence." He gestured to his companions. "Show her." The other cubs produced a collection of items. Muddy footprints captured on scanner images, fragments of torn ration packaging, and most impressively, a detailed timeline of personnel movements near the storage depot. Arya knelt down to examine their work, genuine surprise replacing her amusement. The cubs had been thorough. More than thorough, they'd been methodical, patient, and analytical. Traits that Vrexian warriors were famous for, but seeing them applied to detective work by children was something else entirely. "This is exceptional work," she said honestly. Tovik's scales rippled with what Arya had learned was pride. "We wanted to solve the case first. Like Detective Marlowe in the film you showed us." He adjusted the sunglasses again. "We're close. We believe the thief strikes during the 3rd solar phase when the guard rotation changes." "And you plan to catch them?" "Affirmative." Tovik straightened to his full 4-foot height. "We've established a stakeout position. We just need—" He paused, suddenly looking very young despite the sunglasses. "We need permission to stay past curfew tonight." Arya should have said no. Should have taken this to Commander Vraxis immediately. But something in Tovik's eager expression, in the way all 4 cubs leaned forward waiting for her answer, made her reconsider. Humans had been underestimated in the galactic community for decades. "Too soft," the other species said. too emotional, too willing to trust. But humanity had proven that those perceived weaknesses were actually strengths: empathy, creativity, the ability to see potential where others saw limitation. These were human superpowers. Maybe it was time to pay that forward. "I'll speak to the commander," Arya said. "But you'll need adult supervision for the stakeout." Tovik's eyes, all three sets of inner lids, blinked in rapid succession. "You would do this?" "Detective work requires dedication and courage," Arya replied, echoing a line from one of those old noir films. "You cubs have shown both. But it also requires following protocol." She held out her hand. "Partners?" Tovik stared at her outstretched hand for a moment before understanding dawned. He gripped it carefully, mindful of his claws. "Partners." That night, Arya found herself crouched behind a supply crate, with 4 cubs wearing makeshift sunglasses, waiting in the darkness of the depot. Commander Vraxis had been skeptical until she showed him the cubs' evidence. Then he'd been impressed. Then, concerned. Then, finally, he'd agreed on the condition that Arya supervise. The third solar phase approached. The guard rotation began, and right on schedule, a shadow detached itself from the far wall. "There," Tovik whispered, so quiet Arya barely heard him. They watched as the figure, definitely Vrexian, adult-sized, moved toward the ration storage. The cubs remained perfectly still, their predator instincts overriding their excitement. Arya felt a surge of pride watching them. When the thief's hands closed around a ration pack, Tovik gave the signal. Floodlights blazed to life. Security personnel emerged from concealment. And 4 cubs in sunglasses stepped forward like the galaxy's smallest, scaliest detective agency. The thief turned out to be a junior logistics officer with a gambling debt. Commander Vraxis handled the arrest personally, but not before commending the cubs on their investigative work. Later, as the twin moons rose over Kareth 9, Arya sat on that same rock where she'd left her sunglasses weeks ago. Tovik approached, holding them carefully. "I believe these belong to you," he said formally. Arya took them, turning them over in her hands. "You know, Tovik, I think you and your team earned these. Consider them official equipment for the newly formed Kareth 9 Junior Security Division." Tovik's scales flushed with color. "Truly? Truly. But you'll need to file proper reports, maintain professional standards, and," Arya smiled, "maybe solve a few more cases." As she walked back to the outpost, Arya heard Tovik organizing his team, already planning their next investigation. She'd come to this world expecting to teach the Vrexians about humanity. Instead, she'd learned something herself. Sometimes the best way to inspire others isn't through grand gestures or formal lessons. Sometimes all it takes is leaving your sunglasses on a rock and seeing what happens next. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's knack for lateral thinking, but Arya suspected that these cubs, with their human-inspired detective work and Vrexian predator instincts, would become something the galaxy had never seen before. And it had all started with a pair of forgotten sunglasses and a human willing to let children dream.